right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dharma Digs podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. As always, I'm your host, Taylor Winchester, and I'm forever grateful that you've decided to stop by and take a little bit of time out of your day to stop in and tune into this podcast. So appreciate you being here as always. Today we've got another solo dig episode for you where I talk a little bit about some things I'm learning recently, and we'll dive into that in a few minutes. But first, I want to take a few seconds here to thank my most recent guest, Jason Jett, for being a part of this podcast. He was on last week's episode. Hopefully you caught it. If you haven't, you should totally check that out. He just opened a new studio here in Charlotte called Grindhouse. They're doing some really cool things, putting out some really great content, so go follow them on social media if you haven't already. And of course, I always shout out Leo Solis for lending me his tunes to use as the intro, outro music for this podcast. So yeah, thanks as always, Leo. A couple other exciting things in my world. As many of you know, I work in the music industry, obviously, and some of these conversations have taken place around that. But I'm excited to actually have some work again in the sense of marketing shows. We recently announced a show in partnership with Mountain Roots Management here in North Carolina. I'm handling marketing for the Van Hoy Revival series, which is happening at old Van Hoy Farms up in Harmony, North Carolina. It's just north of Statesville, about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte. There's some great history with that farm from the old time or the Union Grove Fiddlers Convention that happened there way back in the day. So there's really some cool things that'll be rolling out in the coming weeks. The show, the first show that we've announced thus far is actually April 23rd and 24th with the infamous String Dusters. Features Sierra Hull and Justin Moses on Friday night, and then on Saturday the 24th, the special guest will actually be the Traveling McCurry. So I'm stoked for that, excited to be promoting it and working on it. Also just announced this week actually a festival down in Charlotte or in Florida, and it's called in Lake Wales, Florida. It's called the Orange Blossom Review, and that is an exciting lineup. We got the Wood Brothers, Devin Gilfillian, Nikki Bloom, Hayes Carl, the Steel Drivers. So that's in December. If you're into stuff like that, you should check it out. I'll have some info on my website for you to know where to go. But yeah, so I'm just excited to feel like things are getting back to normal. Hopefully you're staying safe out there. Hopefully some of you are getting vaccinated and making that decision to really help progress us back into some sense of normalcy when it comes to music and live entertainment. But all right, with that being said, one more note, I'll say next week's interview is going to feature my good friend here in Charlotte that I've made in the last couple of years, Mr. David Lee Arrington, goes by Day Lee. And that conversation is exciting for me to roll out because he's done some really cool things for the community of musicians and really art and entertainers in general here in Charlotte, as far as some of the equity across the vast world of all these different people that play in our sandbox of musicians. So stay tuned for that one. All right, so today's conversation with myself here and you as listeners is going to be around the word discernment. And in Sanskrit, which is you've heard me talk about if you've listened to other episodes, being that I'm diving into more of the Ayurvedic approach to lifestyle and some of the whole health approach with meditation, much of the meditations typically incorporate some type of mantra, and usually that's a Sanskrit term. And so for discernment, the Sanskrit term is viveka, and the word, for whatever reason, has been popping up in different books that I've been reading lately, quotes that I've seen people share. And so it really, I'm reading this book called The Calling, and I was looking back, but I remember it popping up and I couldn't find the exact quote without reading the whole last 40 pages that I read. But I just started thinking about that term. It started to pop up in my daily, not vocabulary per se, but in those many thoughts that we all have, right? And just trying to, I've heard the word used, but I've never really used it a lot myself. And when I did start doing some research on it, it got compared to the word of judgment, which in our society, judging people or judging others or judging things can be sometimes can be condemned or looked at as not so valuable to our approach to life, I guess you could say. And so it just made me kind of contemplate it, in which that is the purpose of this podcast is to help others hopefully contemplate some things that we don't always talk about. And I really started just doing some research on the word discernment, looking it up, and the definition in the dictionary that I found after a few quick Google searches is basically a very simple version is the ability to judge well. So discernment, the ability to judge well. So that was interesting to me to actually utilize the word judge within the definition of discernment, when judging can be looked at as not necessarily the best thing to do when it comes to our inner thought patterns, I guess you could say. And what it also led me to realize is that actually the word is used not only in spirituality and kind of more of this Eastern philosophy meditative approach to life, but also in more of the here in the Southeast, the Christianity religion side of things. I noticed that it gets used there quite a bit, and there was a lot of results that came up in Googling the term that led me down a religion kind of path of research. And so another definition in Christian context is the perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding. So I'll say that one more time for you. Discernment used in Christian context is perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding. And that one kind of stuck out to me again because I don't really consider myself a super religious person. I have done and been involved in some different religious upbringings. So I have a little bit of background, but currently in the last, I'd say 15, 20 years, I've not really been the most religious of practitioners. Excuse me while I wet the whistle here. But it was interesting that it has such a religious context to it in some ways. And I think something that comes up when I think about religion, and specifically kind of the Christian approach and a lot of what I grew up and a lot of my friends and kind of the culture around me being raised here in the Southeast, was a lot of religious context around the Bible and the scriptures. And I think there's a ton of value in the scriptures, and I won't get into kind of the issues that I have with it, because there aren't really that many issues with the scriptures itself. It's more about, in some ways, it's where I feel like we find ourselves currently in the political and socioeconomic realm. There seems to be, in a lot of ways, a bit what is the word I'm looking for? Maybe hypocrisy in some ways, because it's easy to say that we're being non-judgmental and that we're being perfect spiritual practitioners or perfect religious followers of a certain scripture. But it just seems like if you look around, it's also very apparent that unfortunately there is a lot of judgment with not necessarily intent, but also not much awareness or consciousness around that judgment. And that's something that I've been working on myself. And I don't claim that it's an easy thing. And I'm certainly no angel in that regards myself, but some of the interesting stuff, let's talk a little bit about it. Let's unpack this if we may here. So judgment, I feel like when I was researching it, can come as like a reaction and almost this duality approach of the position we put ourselves in relation to whatever it is we're judging. And that was a little eye-opening to me because, again, it comes back to consciousness and being aware and being more present in our moments and these finite moments that we have in this great walk of life. And that's what I'm striving towards in this kind of new Ayurvedic direction of philosophy that I'm going to. And so that was really interesting to me because the difference there is that while, yes, you need a certain sense of judgment and relation to judgment to properly discern things, the goal here is to not be judging in that context. And hopefully this is kind of making sense to you. Drop a note and a comment below if you're following me here, and let me know what you think about this. But where it goes then to say that discernment is more about understanding and clarity with compassion around whatever it is in the moment. So whatever that awareness of that experience is that maybe you're making this decision this true distinction between right or wrong or good or evil or whatever it may be. And it's just, that discernment between the real and the unreal, the self and the non-self, the permanent and the impermanent is something that kind of keeps coming up in my spiritual seeking here of late, because really what I'm hoping to do is find more peace within myself, but more awareness within the context of all of the crazy, chaotic things that happen in within our senses. The reality, I believe, is that there are way more things happening outside of these five senses that we have that we're not all in tune with, and I'm hoping to strive for more attunement with those as well. But I think ultimately, in order to quiet the mind down, and this is where I'm going with the meditative practice, is to quiet the mind down to discern between, when they say what is real or unreal, is basically what is it can kind of be looked at as a priority, is like what is needed and what is not needed within our life. And if anything, you can begin to detach yourself and move yourself away from the things that are not providing value in your life, so that you can then put more focus, more conscious awareness around the things that are providing value. And how do we do that in a more cyclical, repetitive way? And not only in an effort to help ourselves, but also to lead by example and hopefully helping others. And that is something that I'm striving forward. And I hope that you are too. I hope that you are too. So let me read a couple of other little quotes here that I picked up when I was doing some reading and research. This is an ancient Indian spiritual leader. I came across this one that I thought was very relative to my practice at the moment and what I'm seeking, and maybe it will be for yours as well. But essentially, here it is. It's, we should not fret for what is past, nor should we be anxious about the future. For when we live with discernment, we deal only with the present moment. And that is Chanakya. Don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm not great with some of these Vedic terms or Sanskrit terms and spellings yet, but I'll read it one more time. We should not fret for what is past, nor should we be anxious about the future. Men of discernment, or when we live with discernment, we deal only with the present moment. And I just love that quote, because I want to become more and more engulfed in the here and the now and the be here now, and living in this present moment, and really understanding with some sense of clarity, with some enough compassion and loving awareness for those and all of the things around me, to make the decisions and make a choice about how I'm going to approach my life with a sense of discernment, not judgment, but a detachment from judging things, but really with the conscious awareness of how my decision is going to not only impact myself, but impact everything around me. Because in the end, we are all a part of this divine oneness and amazingness that is consciousness. So one more thing that I read that I'll share with you, and if you're following along, I mean, I've tell people this all the time, and I'll say it probably again at the end of this episode. I would love for you to share and follow along as far as depending on the platform you digest this content. But also, if you're on YouTube, hit that like button below, the thumbs up, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe, because that really helps me reach more people. And if you find any value in this, hopefully then you would be willing to share it and try and assume that other people can find value. I am finding value in the accountability that this podcast has brought me into exploring and learning more. I was just having this conversation last night with a buddy of mine, and this has just been a great experiment for me to stay true to my path of seeking better understanding, seeking more enlightenment, and hopefully you're gaining some value out of that too. But okay, so real quick, one more thing that I want to read in relation to the term discernment. So the outer distinctions, the right or wrong, the pleasant or unpleasant, those are things that we attribute to things, but they aren't that true nature of whatever it is. So let's try and come up with an example. You're having a conversation with somebody, and maybe they make a statement, or maybe you're not even in the conversation, you're overhearing a conversation, and then you automatically begin to judge somebody that's sitting next to you at the bar. as they're having a conversation about whatever it may be. It could be they'll just assume they're gossiping about another couple of people, and it's really easy for us to all of a sudden quickly want to judge them based on the conversation that they're happening. First of all, obviously we don't know the full context of those stories, but secondly, I would say what I think is more important is realizing and remembering that because they're engaging in what could be considered gossip or could be considered drama, melodramas, what have you, the reality is that that's not their true essence. That is not when things are all said and done, deep down inside, there is a being there that is not truly that type of a being. So how do we acknowledge that there are certain things happening, but remember that true essence isn't always what is pushing those things out? And discerning between those two things will make you, as a person that's listening in and eavesdropping a little bit, hopefully not be so quick to judge or so quick to condemn someone else about those things, but to realize that, we're all guilty of these things. We all do certain things that maybe we shouldn't, say things that we shouldn't, but how do we ultimately become more aware of those things? And the only way to do that is to turn inward and work on transitioning yourself into a better, more conscious, more aware being. And so I've loved really looking into this kind of concept of discernment, feeling more in line with what it means when I read it in a sentence, but truly also being able to apply it in my day-to-day life. And that's what made me want to share it with you. So that's all I really got for today, folks. I appreciate you stopping by and tuning in. Would love to hear kind of maybe if you're familiar with the word, what you would define it as, or how maybe it's played a role in your life. So if you have time, drop me a comment in the video below or on this Instagram feed if you're watching it there. But yeah, thank you for being here. As I mentioned, stay tuned for next week's episode with Day Lee. It's going to be a fun one, especially if you're in tune at all with the Charlotte music scene and some of the stuff he's doing. You'll be stoked to hear about all of that. Otherwise, I hope you all live with intention. You carry this love and light within you out to others. Tell the truth and love everyone. That's what Ram Dass, I've learned from him and his guru, is the best way to approach things is to tell the truth and love everyone. So hopefully we can all begin to do that more regularly. And other than that, folks, tune in again next week. Drop me a comment, a review, and a follow if you haven't already. I love you all. Love and light. Namaste. Thank you for being here. Enjoy your day.